The best guitarists of all time. Any fan of rock music has their own personal list, and the beautiful thing about these lists is that everyone's opinion is unique and interesting. I'm hoping to pique your interest in the second half of this two-part video of my 20 favorite guitarists of all time. In part 1, I counted down numbers 20 through 11. I like to think that my list was pretty diverse, with entries ranging from 70s and 80s new wave pioneers like Elvis Costello, to 90s grunge masters like Jerry Cantrell, to middle of the century stalwarts like Muddy Waters and Joao Gilberto. I love all types of guitar-based music, from that original American blues music all the way up to death metal, and I hope to reflect more of this in my top 10, so let's get right into it. Kicking it off at number 10, I have Tom Morello. Known as the guitarist for the 90s political rap metal titans Rage Against the Machine, he did go on to help form the band Audioslave after Rage broke up in the 2000s. Now, my favorite work by Tom Morello is definitely from Rage Against the Machine. He has had a storied career with both bands and even participated in the hip-hop metal crossover project Prophets of Rage a little bit more recently. He's also toured with Bruce Springsteen's The E Street Band. Tom Morello is one of the most versatile and diverse guitarists out there, and he's also headed up a solo career known as the one-man act The Night Watchman. His career, of course, was first defined by those funk metal-driven riffs in Rage Against the Machine. He used heavy kind of guitar feedback-based effects, no pedals or anything, and unconventional soloing styles. He's best known for using his guitar in an unorthodox way to generate strange sounds, using irregular picking, string scraping, as well as I said, the use of feedback. His post-Rage years did still feature a lot of boundary pushing, but not quite as much as in Rage. He's also, again, shown that diversity, as The Night Watchman is kind of an acoustic folk-based guitar project. And again, while I love Morello mostly for his work in Rage, his sonic diversity throughout his career, his trailblazing and forward-thinking ear, and his ability to execute and do things differently than just about any other guitarist in existence is what really set him aside for me. While I wish he could have replicated the importance and boundary pushing that he had earlier in his career, he's an incredibly important guitar player who reimagined how to get the most out of his instrument. Number 9 is a pick on my list that may not make too much sense if you don't really listen to progressive rock, but I love the band King Crimson. I love Robert Fripp, who is the band's only consistent member through decades and decades and so many lineup changes. King Crimson for me is up there with Rush as the best prog rock band of all time, and Fripp from the start has been, of course, the most integral component of the band. Best known for his jazzy, intricate compositions with irregular time signatures, and for being one of the most notable guitarists to employ the cross-picking technique. Fripp is actually one of the most active and accomplished musicians of all time. He's released a ton, and when I say that, I mean hundreds of albums and EPs from his work in King Crimson as a solo artist, and then working alongside fellow legends such as Brian Eno. During a time where the most visible guitar players, especially from the UK, were utilizing that blues rock style taken from American pioneers, Fripp was on his own island of sorts, gaining heavy influence from classical music and jazz, really fully establishing himself as a guitar intellect through his technical, complex compositions that, in the case of at least King Crimson's first album, 1969's In the Court of the Crimson King, remained somewhat accessible and digestible by the masses, though that is kind of a strange album at the same time. As the years went by, though, Fripp began to expand into new stylistic areas, both with King Crimson and on his own, and by the 80s he had developed a specific tuning style to his guitar, which he dubbed quite simply New Standard Tuning. For you music theory heads, this has each string 1/5 higher than the last, which allows for easier fingering of specific chords that may not be available in a standard tuning. It also, at the same time, makes scales and lead guitar work more complicated, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will. NST, as it would later be known, is a widely used tuning scheme that Fripp literally invented, and this, among many other things, makes him, in my eyes, one of the most intriguing and talented guitarists on the planet. Number 8, we're going to keep things centered on a guitar player whose most notable work is, like Robert Fripp, rooted in the 60s and 70s, and also, like Fripp, Joni Mitchell is not just a talented guitar player that revolutionized her own creative space, but she's also an artistic and musical institution. The Canadian singer-songwriter is most well known for her gorgeous, minimalistic folk compositions, backed by mostly lush, melodic, and majestic acoustic guitar work. Her voice might actually be the most iconic part of her artistry, and on her early work she was known for being very high-pitched, but also soft and soothing before she kind of toned that down and started favoring lower octaves, beginning around the time of her seminal release 1976's Hejira. She's also known for her prowess as a piano player, but she's a far more accomplished guitarist than people realize. Many of the songs she has written over the years have been done in these strange alternative, non-standard tunings, strings, giving her the ability to experiment with unorthodox chords and underlying musical structures. This, as Mitchell has admitted, has caused her problems when performing, though it gives much of her early catalog a very distinct feel that brings a certain dissonance to her otherwise gorgeously executed, often finger-picked guitar techniques. The image of Joni Mitchell with an acoustic guitar is simply an iconic vision for a music lover like myself, and she was one of the most important singer-songwriters in the 60s and 70s. But she's continued to write and perform, and in more recent years, despite some health challenges, she does remain one of the greatest musicians and guitar players of all time. Good enough for number 8 on my list. I return to my metal roots for the 7th pick on my list. The Swedish prog metal band Opeth is my favorite metal band of all time. Its only remaining founding member and lead vocalist and lead guitarist is Mikael Akerfeldt, who comes in at number 7. Opeth has accomplished so much in the prog metal space dating all the way back to the mid-90s. Evolving from album to album is arguably the most technically sound prog metal band that there is. Mixing elements of death metal and progressive rock, Opeth has one of the most impressive catalogs in metal history, in my opinion, featuring some of my favorite albums of all time from any genre of music ever. This includes the prog and death metal masterpiece Still Life from 1999, the morose, clean guitar and clean vocal-driven depressive rock soundscapes of 2003's Damnation, all the way back to the traditional prog rock styles more recently used by Opeth on albums like Pale Communion. Akerfeldt has been the creative force for Opeth since day one, and on the band's most heralded work that really took place from about their 2nd to their 7th or 8th album, he was known for mixing these quiet, pastoral, folky passages with the sudden emergence of heavy passages. His ability to execute all these styles, sometimes having 3 or 4 different stylistic shifts in like a 10-minute song, really shows his versatility as not only a guitar player but as a musician. He's also known for his intricate lead guitar work, which can be tailored to more of those traditional prog rock styles, all the way up to shred your face off death metal. His use of melodic dissonance in both his acoustic and heavier riff writing gave Opeth a very distinct sound on their unprecedented run between 1998's My Arms Your Hearse and 2005's Ghost Reveries. I consider this to be one of the strongest 6-album runs in not just metal but music history. While many longtime Opeth fans were alienated by the band's decision to kind of suddenly drop the metal from their repertoire, which took place between 2011's Heritage and 2019's In Cauda Venenum, I think these albums, while they're not quite as great as Opeth's peak work, they really show Akerfeldt's diversity as a musician. They show his inventiveness, and this plus my love of pretty much every Opeth album in existence make Mikael Akerfeldt a perfect pick for my top 10. Wow, 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 wow. Funk music, man. Funkadelic is one of the most successful and iconic funk rock bands of all time. While they have a seriously deep discography and had an incredible run throughout most of the 1970s, their first 3 albums are all among their most notable, and all of those albums feature the guitar work of the late great Eddie Hazel, who's number 6 on my list. Starting out at just the age of 17 in a band by the name of The Parliaments, which was led by George Clinton, that band quickly morphed into Funkadelic by the end of the 60s, adding some new members and eventually dropping 3 sublime albums between 1970 and 1971. Hazel quickly rose to prominence as the group's lead guitarist, quickly leaving his mark on the band before leaving the group at the end of 1971 due to financial disputes. While he would still contribute to the group's releases as the 70s went on, and there were some excellent releases from Funkadelic without Eddie Hazel on them, he's most known for his seminal work on those first 3 records. He's the architect behind what is considered one of the greatest guitar solos of all time, and that's on the title track of the band's 1971 album Maggot Brain. On this winding 10-minute emotional piece, Hazel orchestrates a gorgeous melodic and sad wailing extended solo. It's mind-blowing, and it's arguably the most notable moment in Funkadelic's discography. The Maggot Brain solo is really just a microcosm of his ability as a lead guitarist, as he was known for playing loud, aggressive, effects-driven solos. So while he got emotional on Maggot Brain, he was known for a bit more of an in-your-face and loud, reverb-heavy guitar style. When it came to soloing, it gave these funky and bouncy songs even more of a personality, even more of a presence. Hazel's guitar work always commands the attention of the listener. His prowess as a soloist is beyond impressive. For years, I played lead guitar in various bands of different genres, ranging from metal to kind of classic rock cover bands, and I always kind of thought of Eddie Hazel and his stage presence and his attitude as a guitarist. I always took influence from him. I think because he was only a primary member of the band for 3 albums, he's not really given enough love. He kind of falls under the radar sometimes. I'm proud, though, to include him at number 6. Eddie Hazel absolutely deserves it. It took me until my adulthood, but I've really grown to love the band Sonic Youth. The New York City 4-piece has one of music's all-time great catalogs, centerpiece by 1988's Daydream Nation. Their run both before and after that album was driven by the duo of Thurston Moore and Ranaldo, who combined for the 5th spot on my list. Sonic Youth's anxious, dissonant, driving, energetic soundscapes emerged immediately when the band broke out in the early to mid 80s, and they were perfected as the decade went on. They were the brainchild of Ranaldo and Moore. Of course, there were also contributions from co-vocalist and bassist Kim Gordon. I really don't know how to explain why I love Sonic Youth's sound so much, other than it's just ultra unique. It combines that nervous energy. It has these dissonant guitar parts. Sometimes they're clean, sometimes they're distorted. It also has kind of an urban, almost like industrial component that can range from melodic and upbeat and catchy to dark and dystopian. Both Moore and Ranaldo were also part of a band before Sonic Youth called Even Worse. They were a punk band. And around that time, once that band broke up, they actually joined up with avant-garde and no-wave musician Glenn Branca. They collaborated on his 1980 EP, Lesson Number 1. It was here that they learned experimental and unorthodox guitar techniques from Branca. And by the time Sonic Youth got together soon after and they released their first couple of albums in the first half of the 80s, it was clear that Branca's experimental avant-garde influence was really being felt and utilized. They transformed this influence into a feedback-driven, rhythmic dissonance that really did just become the blueprint of Sonic Youth right from the get-go. Though they did evolve as they got into the 90s into more of an accessible, melodic, calmer outfit that sounded more like 90s alt-rock would eventually sound, Ranaldo and Moore always kept the roots of the band's distinctive sound intact. I feel like there's so many different nuances and artistic tangents that we need to discuss when it comes to Sonic Youth, but for the purposes of time, I'll just say this. I've never heard a guitar duo with a more unique, unconventional, and nonconformist sound. Sonic Youth stands in a league of its own for so many reasons, and one of them is the tag team action between two of the most underrated guitarists of all time, in my opinion. While a lot of their stuff, it's a little bit weird, it's not for everybody, it's not exactly accessible, it sets them aside along with their ability to be accessible and catchy, and it just makes their body of work so diverse and impressive. I'm going to come out and say that my number 4 pick is a safe one, but it's an appropriate one. I think any fan of rock music would include this guitarist on their list. I'd be remiss if I didn't include Jimi Hendrix near the top of my list. He's one of the most remarkable guitarists of all time, flourishing in the psychedelic and blues rock explosion in the second half of the 60s. In part 1, I shared my thoughts about how many bands at this time were kind of stealing that blues sound from American pioneers such as Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, John Lee Hooker. But even though Hendrix may be guilty of that, he didn't have quite the same, let's call it, privilege that Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and a lot of those other guys did. Plus, Hendrix's specialty was actually psychedelic rock. He was more of a psychedelic guitarist than he was a blues guitarist, though there were heavy blues influences on a lot of his songs. He and the UK-based Jimi Hendrix Experience gave us some of the most impressive and trippy albums of the second half of the 60s. Their 1967 debut, Are You Experienced, from a musical standpoint, is one of the most amazingly executed albums of the entire era, as Hendrix croons emotionally as a lyricist and frontman while just making his guitar sing. In a time of guitarists experimenting and revolutionizing the sonic structures of rock music as it evolved in its earliest years, I think Hendrix was perhaps the most boundary-pushing of them all. He seems to use his guitar as an extension of his soul, and as wild and drug-addled as his performances and some of his recordings were, he managed to set a bar for guitarists that I don't think has ever really been matched without the use of heavy distortion. He was so technical, he was so accurate, he had the ability to execute his lead parts flawlessly, almost unconsciously coaxing his guitar to make sounds that I'm still floored by today when I go back and listen to his work. Even on more accessible songs like Little Wing, his simple rhythm riffs, if you will, are not simple, they're complex, they're very hard to replicate. I've played guitar for over 20 years and I've always had a hell of a time deciphering pretty much any Jimi Hendrix tab. So look, while Hendrix is a safe and predictable pick at number 4, it's one that I feel is 100,000% justified. Casual music listeners do see him as one of the most incredible humans to pick up a guitar. While I don't usually agree with casual points of view so much, this is one that I can absolutely get behind, as Hendrix, simply put, was a guitar god. Even though his catalog is limited due to his life being cut short, he left an unbelievable legacy blazing trails like few other guitar players. If you know me and you know this channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the band Death, a death metal band, probably one of the first death metal bands that there was. Their 1995 album Symbolic is one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's a perfect 10. The band was led by Chuck Schuldiner, who is the only consistent member during the band's run from the mid-80s to the early 2000s. He is number 3 on my list, and this comes with some serious weight being this high. Hopefully you will understand a little bit more why I love Chuck so much, but my best advice to you is just go listen to some of his work. Chuck was Death's Opeth's lead vocalist, songwriter, and guitarist. So Death, again, for people who may not know metal so well, has one of the most deep and celebrated catalogs in metal history. Schuldiner, he's the man behind it all, and he's often seen as one of the godfathers of death metal. At first, earlier in their career, he kept it simple, heavy, fast, and relentless. He had more simplistic riffs at first that did start to evolve in more of a melodic direction as the European melodic death metal scene really took over in the 90s. Chuck has written some of the most stunning death metal passages of all time, with songs like Pull the Plug off their 1988 classic Leprosy, to really anything off of their perfect 1991 album Human, to more progressive classics like Crystal Mountain and Sacred Serenity off of Symbolic, all the way to the song Spirit Crusher, just such an amazingly executed guitar song off their last album, 1998's The Sound of Perseverance. Chuck was a flawless guitarist, and seeing live footage of him belt out his shrieks and screams while shredding his way through riffs and solos, it's just one of the most incredible, influential sights to a metal fan like me. His leads were extremely technical, complex, fast, blistering, and he is, in my opinion, the most talented death metal guitarist of all time. The way his solos match his chord progressions and riffs, it's just flawless. It's very well thought out from a musical standpoint. He's not just some guy who can shred by playing random notes and tremolo picking his way through and covering it up with distortion. This is actual calculated musicianship. This is actually pretty prominent in the more technical side of death metal, but for me, Chuck did it better than just about anyone. His life ended prematurely and very sadly at the age of 34 as he battled a rare form of brain cancer, but he had a ton of output with the band Death, with the band Control denied right at the end of his life. He redefines the term legendary in my book. He was one of my guitar heroes growing up, and to this day his work still heavily resonates with me. While I have one of the godfathers of death metal at number 3, I'm going to put one of, if not the godfather of heavy metal at number 2, and that's Tony Iommi. Another relatively safe pick. Iommi's slow, deliberate, creepy, and heavy guitar style immediately stood out as Black Sabbath broke out in 1970. It was on Sabbath's 1970 self-titled debut that Iommi showed the world that riffs could be slower, heavy, less bluesy, a little more dissonant, using that tritone, those evil sounds, and he most likely accidentally birthed the entire genre of heavy metal. Sabbath's second album, Paranoid, showed that the band could grab the attention of a wider range of listeners, led by the driving, energetic title track that had heavy airplay, to more stark, dystopian songs like War Pigs and Iron Man, all of which had music and riffs composed by Tony Iommi. Sabbath would go on an incredible run throughout the mid-70s, with Iommi expanding his style to become a bit more progressive and technical as the decade went on, before the original lineup split in the late 70s due to conflicts within the band having to do with Ozzy Osbourne. So by the 80s, Iommi was now competing within a genre that he had basically facilitated, as you had bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden who had emerged. So what Iommi did is he went and he recruited Ronnie James Dio, an American who had participated in the band Rainbow in the 70s. Sabbath ended up revamping their style, getting a little faster, more energetic, less doomy. Tony was a prolific lead guitarist for his day as well, often using the pentatonic scale with bluesy undertones. Now, the pentatonic scale has become sort of a signature go-to for novice guitarists. It's an easy way to sound cool quickly if you want to be a lead guitarist. It's been used by so many metal guitarists ad nauseum over the years, but Iommi was the one who made it a staple of Black Sabbath's work and early heavy metal. A bit of rock music lore: Iommi actually lost the tips of several of his fingers working in a factory as a teenager a few years before Black Sabbath, so he totally had to revamp his playing style, which led to him kind of tuning the strings down a little bit. This made the use of power chords more accessible. This led to him writing darker and slower riffs to match the key that they were being played in, and boom, heavy metal was born. Iommi's ability to keep evolving as a guitarist over the years through the ups and downs with the lineup changes of Black Sabbath, to stay consistent, to stay fresh, to keep perpetuating the metal culture as it grew and expanded. It just makes him one of my favorite not only guitarists but musicians of all time. Iommi is a legend. He's one of guitar-based music's most notable trailblazers, and his most notable contributions to music and society are some of my favorite all-time songs and albums. My number one pick is going to be one that may be a little bit polarizing. I don't know if it's a very conventional pick for number one. I've spoken in other videos about posthumous appeal, which I want to just straight off the bat tell you is not driving this pick at all. This is an artist that I luckily noticed the greatness of while he was still alive, and not only is he my favorite guitarist of all time, but he's one of the best singers, multi-instrumentalists, songwriters, and had unbelievable charismatic stage presence. I'm talking, of course, about the legendary Prince. He goes way beyond being being a guitarist, but his career ranging from his synth funk-based early work from the late 70s and through much of the 80s, through his musical evolutions in the 90s and 2000s and beyond, Prince has always shown that he has the ability to be heavily diverse on guitar, ranging from funky, bouncing, rhythmic riffs and melodies to some of the most majestic guitar solos of all time. I think his solo on the song Purple Rain is one of the greatest examples of what a lead guitarist can do. He's got other legendary solos on songs like Bambi, Three Chains of Gold. He was known for letting loose with impromptu guitar solos in live performances. This amplified what was already a commanding stage presence. When it comes to his songwriting and execution of rhythm guitar parts and guitar-based structures within his different songs, it's really hard to pick favorites as he's got such a deep and wide catalog. I think on early albums like Dirty Mind in 1999, he really established himself as that multifaceted musician by demonstrating that he could write funky, upbeat, decadent guitar parts just as well, if not better, than his iconic synth compositions, which single-handedly define the Minneapolis sound. I love the guitar work across his 1987 album Sign of the Times, which may be his finest work, and of course there's the iconic playing on the Purple Rain soundtrack and 1995's The Gold Experience, which I think is his best album after his peak 80s run. He was such a versatile musician, talented just above and beyond really anyone else that I can think of, and this translated beautifully to his guitar work. He made his guitar parts an extension of his passion, his energy, his musical charisma, his devil-may-care attitude, and he used his guitar and his synth parts to help establish his reputation as a musical lone wolf, a trailblazer, a shameless soldier of passion, and one of the best musicians to ever live. How are you feeling about my top 10? Who would you include in your top 10 or your top 20 for that matter? When it comes to guitarists, we have so many different choices, so if my opinions don't match up with yours, that's exactly what they are. Their opinions, music taste is subjective, but let me know in the comments what you think, how you feel, who your favorite guitarists are. And if you like what you're seeing, hopefully you do if you're still with me at this point in the video, be sure both to subscribe to my channel and drop me a like while you're at it. And also, go back and check out part 1 if you haven't seen it already. Great to have you along for the ride as always. I will catch you the next time around.